Yeah, let's see.
Okay, um, we are preparing the live stream. It's setting up and we are live. Okay, hey everyone. It's Friday and even on Easter, we don't stop to give you nice little Easter eggs in the form of F sharp. We are amplifying F sharp, a community initiative to drive the ecosystem forward, to help the community stay alive and help contributors or new contributors finding their way in the open source world. I will show you a little bit what we do. Um, if you are interested in having a session with us, you can go to our page and you will find the join us button. And yeah, there you can share your idea with us, or if you're unsure, you can just directly get in touch with us, like many people did before. Little bit of news in the community we want to share because people who are dear to our heart have contributed a lot to it. We have a new release of the F sharp spec, and a lot of work has gone into this from people like Edgar, people like Martin. Huge shout outs to these. Um, yeah, check it out. It's very, very important to have such a spec. For a long time, it was in a not so great condition or even missing, if you want to say. But yeah, due to the efforts of good people, it's now in the making and coming along nicely. So that's the news we want to share. Having said that, we go to the session of today, which is won by Oscar. Let me show you the page. Here it is. And Oscar will share his experience in modeling a domain with F sharp. To be precise, it's the domain of auctioning. And with that, I will give it over to Oscar.
Hello. So I why auctions and why is that? Well, it's because um, I've been in a couple of companies doing auctions, and in in a way, auctions are kind of it's sort of a simple domain, but there are a lot of complexities related to it, and there are also different auction models that you might not realize that there are unless you have been sort of adjacent to that business. Um, and so, so the so w- what have I done? Well, I've tried modeling this same domain in in a few different ways. Um, Using first F sharp and then other languages such as C sharp and like you know different things just to get a feeling for how it is. And I'll start sharing. Let's share the desktop. Let's see there. So here we have oh, like this is sort of the main part of this is the domain. This this is a relatively recent attempt at seeing how it could look. Um, Mainly, it's so we see there are two major auction types implemented, and the main complexity about auctions is like if you only have one auction, sure, then it's not as big of a deal. But if you have multiple types of auctions, then sure, you get into like you could have a weirdness around what does it mean to add a bid? When can you add a bid? When uh, who is the winner? And such things. So that's why um, using F sharp, you can get like a relatively you don't get as much code. You get like a nice readable chunk of code per like domain unit or entity or whatever you want to call it. So that's kind of neat. And it in this case, it's maybe not as like I'm using this kind of format, but yeah, mostly in order to try it out and to see how it feels, um, and to have like this state handler implementation instead of the traditional class-based implementation. Um, the and here we see with around 100 lines, we have one auction model. And if we go to the next auction model, we have, yeah, around 140 lines. And if you compare that to, say, C sharp, it balloons rather quickly into more lines of code because there is a bit more ceremony around how you would represent things, and like small things add up. Sure, like things have become way better in the C sharp world later on, and we'll see how it goes. But you can get, I think, my initial attempt at this took around the core domain was only 400 lines of F sharp. So that was kind of neat. Um, like any questions, like um,
You mentioned the traditional model or yeah way of representing um, um, the domain. Not sure. You mentioned the name. What was the name of the traditional way?
like having a class. So
Uh, uh,
this
yeah.
here we are using an object expression, I think it's called.
Hmm.
Um, while let's see if I have it here. Here we have uh, here we are using like a class or a type instead to model the domain.
Ah, okay. We
Uh,
yeah a union, discriminated union.
yeah.
Okay.
Um, but and in this case, here I'm doing um, some would call this over engineering, and I would agree because here I'm actually trying things out in order to see how it would feel and such. While in a like a when you're doing more a system that someone would maintain, you would try to find like, oh, how which of these things can you expect your coworkers to maintain? So then you'd have probably something else. But yeah,
And how would you describe the differences in the two modeling approaches. Like what would you expect coworkers to have a easier time maintaining?
Yeah, it all depends on like what's their experience. Um, like um, Generally, people will have an easier time with fewer abstractions, fewer concepts, fewer things to learn. Uh, in if you could call it that you're trying to make the code as boring as possible. And but if you go too far on that boring as possible, you could end up in a situation where sort of the amount of code balloons out of it becomes too much code, and then it's unmaintainable because of that reason, because you haven't really done your homework. Like you're trying to build a house with Lego bricks, and it doesn't really work because you need like other tools than uh, than what is available to you. So yeah, there is this, how would you call it? Like
A balance.
yeah, balance. And to be honest, I wrote the initial version of this during a weekend, and then what ended up happening was that uh, the final version got we, we implemented like a C# version, but only with one auction model, and it was fairly more. It was way, how do you say, less competent and more code and more such things, and but it sort of worked, but it took like a while to for the team to get that thing to work and such. Um, but like I don't know, I feel like F# it's an underutilized tool in the toolbox, because like having this ability to get like a short amount of code that is still kind of readable, even if say sure not all of it is like this is influenced how I write F#, of course, but some of it might be it's not, say it's not like um, line noise, sort of like a where you see like some brain fuck or like these Perl golfing experiences or something like that. So it's not, we're not trying to be obtruse or anything. It can be fairly readable.
So with the object expression version of the implementation, so you have now the I state, the same type, but in this case it's an interface, right? And
Yeah.
in the other case was it was just I think just a type.
Yes, exactly.
And in here you can override, like you can only, like, you can modify or update the implementation that you're interested on. Let's say you have different type of auctions, right? So you can have one implementation for the generic parameter of this interface and then change that, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure I follow, but
Yeah, on line 64, you are basically passing a interface with a type, right? So
yeah,
if you want a different behavior for a different kind of type of auction, you can modify the specific implementation of inc and add bid and all of that
yeah.
stuff.
For sure. So say that we had like some kind of it would be interesting to see how you could compose these object expressions and such. But it's it's um, it is a different feeling. I don't know if which one is better or worse. I haven't gotten like a feel for it. So maybe someone else knows more about, okay, these are the pain points with these versus the others.
And in this case, it's recursive because you want to go of a more complex scenario here.
Yeah. Yeah, you have you're calling this increment um, when you're adding a bid in order to know that, in order to avoid having to re-implement this kind of checks around if it's ongoing or if it's ended or whatever, those kinds of things are happening.
Maybe you will come to this, but like the first question I have about such a system is how do you handle the incoming bits? Are they coming across the network and you
Yeah.
kind of have to handle the network incoming and make sure that they are ordered in case of because I kind of imagine the order is important. Or how do you handle that
Yeah.
side of the domain?
Yeah, in this case, I'm not trying. In this case, I'm not trying to handle the ordering or like other than having receiving JSON requests. But in a real case, you could like put like ideally you would want um, this to be single-threaded in order to avoid like weirdness around um, bidding. But it's depending on how much traffic you have, it might not matter as much. Like if you're just a like really small thing where it's not so much bidding and there isn't as much frequency going on, then sure, it might not matter as much. Or if it's like the commodity you're selling is not it's not so valuable, then it might not matter so much if it goes wrong, so to say. Well, say if you want the ordering to be um, better, you might have like a first step that is to receive like the commands and then like send those to a separate thing that processes these in a much more single-threaded manner per auction. But I think what we ended up with was kind of like this. Like we weren't dealing so much with. I think that in the end, we didn't. We knew that we had bugs in the code, and we knew that we had there were issues around like if two bids came in too close to each other, weird things could happen. But I think it was something like that, and then but we sort of dealt with it by not dealing with it, and that's the how do you say sorry state that sometimes even though you know that there are bugs and you can fix them, you might not fix them because there might be other more important things from the business that they want you to fix. Like the first attempt was more along, okay, let's have like a thing that receives messages, then have actors that receives the messages as they get in, and then having only one mailbox per auction and such things. But that's that has its own set of problems in that you can't really have two instances of this say this service up and running, because like then you would have multiple mailboxes on different machines or something like that. So then you would have to put this behind some kind of queue, and that would introduce additional overhead.
Okay. Did you what kind of actors implementation did you use for this experiment? Just the built-in mailbox of F#.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so here we're just using Mailbox. I think I've done some version with Hopeback as well in order to see how that flows, and I think it flows kind of neat. It seems kind of neat as well, although there are some kind of like it seems like, yeah. Sorry for derailing, but like Hopak, it seems like a really interesting library. But I don't know what's the state of that right now, because I haven't been needing that kind of uh, primitives for what I'm doing.
So did any of the modeling approaches made testing easier or more difficult? How was the testing story for you?
Well, the testing story is when you're modeling like the domain in this way, like where you have this the domain very, very pure and very without mutating anything, and having this kind of really um, like object functional approach, or what you would call it, like this. Okay, this I state never gets mutated. It only gets it only returns like like the state that would like sort of like date time, and those kinds of classes that um, then the testing story becomes kind of easy, because it's easy to test the different kind of states.
And the hosting was done via Suave. I'm seeing a Suave.fs
Yeah.
file.
I have another version that uses Giraffe as well, because of the similarities. So there are like branches where I've tried it out with Suave, and one I've tried with uh, Giraffe, and I don't remember if there is any other F# library I've tried it out with, but yeah, it's like they're kind of similar. So going from say Suave to Giraffe is usually not such a big deal.
Mm. So
Sorry.
the front end was done separately, like in a some web JS framework or
Yeah. This this never made it into production. These versions of the code,
Mhm.
because we implemented it differently, but what then ended up in production, sure, it had its own. It was only backend. There were no front end related matters in the back in the C# code, and the front end was like a React app.
Mhm.
Yes, I was going to ask. So for data modeling, there's a couple of features in F Sharp like active patterns that I don't know if you consider, for example, to kind of hide or kind of a complex checks like for example on line 208 200 to line 213 there is this kind of like multiple checks, multiple ifs that
Yeah.
in F Sharp we normally use that. So did you consider active patterns for that kind of thing?
Um, I don't think that this is an ant pattern. This is kind of
Sorry, I didn't say anti-pattern. I said active pattern. It is a feature of F Sharp.
an ugly pattern,
No, active.
active pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, active patterns, they are nice. Um, I don't think I'm using it right here though.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's was just an observation that
Yeah,
that kind of logic can go like being on a like in a place where you would just need to match against the inputs and then you will have a that kind of a logic, hidden
yeah,
somewhere and it will be more clear.
yeah. Yeah, it would be interesting to refactor it a bit more and see like how would it could it look if you want to make it more like nicer.
Yeah, yeah. Just have a look at the active patterns. I will put a link in the chat so you can read a little bit more about them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've used some active patterns in the code, but not much.
And how did you use Redis in here? To have a cache of the ongoing auction, or for what is it used?
Well, actually, for here I'm using, okay, this is kind of ugly though. And what basically I'm I'm using Redis in order to store everything. So I'm storing like commands and events. So both whenever
Mhm.
anything happens and whenever anything comes in. So both the commands that it gets, so that and then actually both JSON and Redis are used, but it's since this is kind of a proof of concept app or not really a real app, I'm using both of them. While in many cases you would not use like this kind of situation, and the reason for using this is because whenever the system boots up, it loads all the events and then recreates the state in memory.
Okay, so you have a feature of restoring an old auction state, bidding state,
Yeah.
like from disk, so to
Yeah.
say. Oh, okay.
In this case, here it's here it's more yeah, here it's the same kind of thing, but it's structured slightly differently. I have another version where I'm using like more of a traditional SQL Server implementation as such.
Hmm.
It's Like it's um, when you don't have like like an insane amount of bids, or if the bids themselves are important information that could later then you'd probably want to store them as well in some cases. Like, okay, so even rejected bids might have some value for the business. Say that um, if there is like, yeah, it depends on kind of what kind of business you're doing.
Mm.
And but the neat thing about it, about this domain, is that it is kind of complicated, and that's sort of the nice thing, because then we can explore sort of the language and say, okay, so how does it feel to do these kinds of things? If we're only doing like a to-do app or like a simple database CRUD app, we don't get like any feeling for how is it to do something more complicated in F sharp, or if we are doing anything more complicated, we can't share it because it's probably like your business app or something like that.
Can you give an example of one or two challenges in the auctioning domain?
Um, well, one challenge is that we might have touched a bit on is that um, bids that come in roughly at the same time, um, you need to deal with them somehow so that the right bid wins some, because if you have like your traditional auction model, um, the whoever gets sends the first bid with the highest amount is like the highest bidder right now. And if you're like later than that bid, you can't put like the same bid as well. And or there might be some limits around, you might need to raise with some amount as well, and that kind of thing. So that is kind of a challenge in this domain, because this concurrency thing that I've not actually explored as much here, it could be actually a very big thing if what you're doing is like there are people that wants things badly enough, and there is actual value in like trying to do this kind of small and then there is another thing around, like when the end of the auction gets close, some people like to do bid sniping or something like, or like auction sniping or something like that, it's almost over. There is a highest bidder, someone that expects to be able to win, and then you put in like a slightly larger bid in order to win the auction. And in some auction systems, in order to avoid like the auction ending with that, then you extend the auction slightly in order to give the other people time to react.
But couldn't the attacker just do the same thing again with the new deadline? And I mean, then you can go on forever, kind of. Or
Yeah, but as long as you have like a minimum raise, you can
mm,
then it would become like a fair price, because
okay,
then the attacker would be paying the price because then other people would also have the time to be able to bid
Yeah.
on it as well.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So this is used or supposed to be used in a kind of we know our users, they can only make bids after they are known to us.
How do you mean?
Like the people who can bid for you, the people who can give bids into your system, they are all known.
Yeah, for sure.
It's yeah, okay. It's not like they can bid and afterwards they need to tell you tell you who they are. Like that's not the
Well,
case.
the problem with the internet is that that's already the case, even though you have some login and some like you even if you have charged them some fee or something,
Mm,
that can still happen.
okay, but
So
that's kind of outside the domain you have modeled here.
yeah,
That problem.
yeah, for sure. So
Mm,
it is a problem, and of course, but it's and I think at some point in Wikipedia there was a page about around Swedish auctions, and they had the point that um, in Swedish auctions, whenever people are bidding on houses, um, you, they're not binding. So you could bid, like, say, you bid some amount of money for the house, and then you get cold feet, and you say, "Oh no, I don't want it." So, so then, yeah, then you probably have to, the person who is holding the auction then has to deal with that kind of complexity as well. But it's I haven't talked to people who are doing that kind of auctions, how common that phenomenon is, but it could happen even if you have if you have an online auction, you could have the same phenomenon. For instance, if when the bidding ends, you try to charge their credit card and their balance is too low,
mm.
yeah, then suddenly you're left with you having a weird state because so it's
And is your system aimed at a certain product to be auctioned, or is it meant to be used by all kinds of auctions, like, I don't know, art, houses, books? What?
well, it's not meant for any this system is basically I took like the Wikipedia pages and looked at, oh, these are the two common auction models or three variants of auction models,
Mm,
and implemented those in order to see how it would look. And basically it's I think here we go. It's English, blind, and Vickery, and English is like the normal auction, and like the time sending, and then blind and Vickery is where you are only allowed to give a single sealed bid, and when the time runs out, you get like people will know whoever wins. And in one of these, it's that it's the next highest bidder who gets it, in order to encourage a bit more bidding, so to say. So that but I think there is some theory around around auctions, how you get like fair auctions and such. And a lot of these models, even if they look kind of different, they're kind of similar. If you read up on Wikipedia, it says, oh, well, they should be fair auctions. So, but
And does your system also fulfill the job of giving the information about the current highest bid to the participants of the auction?
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Can you say a few words about that part?
Well, for instance, in this variant, if we look at the domain, we have this get bids.
Mhm.
And in the case when you have closed bids, you're not going to see anything because until the auction ends. But if you have like an English auction, you will be able to see the bids because then you get like a list of the bids. And if you have a fairly common scenario is to not show the name of the bidders, instead showing like a bid, like some other identifier for the bidders, like you have a bidder number, or some other identifier for in order to when you bid on, for instance, houses in Sweden. I think I've seen that you have like a bidder number, and then after the auction has ended, you get presented with a list of who the actual bidders are so that you can call them and ask them, oh, are you a real person?
Mhm. Okay. I don't see questions in the chats.
Yeah.
Um, any other topic, any other part of the domain we still need to cover from your side?
I was going to ask, so what kind of did you, for example, write any t verification tests or anything that, might kind of just prove the algorithms, or is it more?
Yeah, I did some tests, like, but fairly few. Like I'm just checking that some of the basic things holds when you're doing auctions, that you can't bid after an auction has ended. You can't that there is a winner and a prize for um, this guy, and then that you can't place bid lower than highest bid. This Some of these you could probably do with property-based testing, and that would be
Exactly,
kind
yeah.
of neat.
Having it.
And then you would have like a much more um, stable system, probably. Like you would know that it works better, because then you don't have like a only some kind of snapshotting of what you're doing. So yeah, that property-based testing, that's great. That's probably something we should try to do more.
Okay. Um, any other questions? I don't see.
Yeah.
Yeah, should we wrap it up, or
Yeah.
is there still something left to talk about?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, what's your feelings? Like, what do you think about this domain? Like, I've used it in order to explore different languages, but like, other people might be using other things in order to get like a feeling for how it is.
No, it seems to be a good good choice, especially as there were different styles of auctions,
Mm.
like the English and the blind ones.
Yeah.
I think that makes it an interesting problem to explore. So yeah, maybe you have started a new trend of having demos instead with the to-do list than with the auctions.
We'll see.
But
Yeah, and just
uh,
to mention that I think it's also there's a point where you just want to represent some states. So you want to make some invalid states unrepresentable. And I think that that is one of the, mottos of any functional programming language, and especially F sharp, where, you can just be able to document that with making those states unrepresentable, and then people that will contribute to your system or read the documentation will understand that better.
Yeah, for sure. Like, yeah, the F sharp for fun and profit, and his content is great.
mm, yeah, the main modeling made functional book
Yeah,
is still a big treasure
yeah,
for modeling. Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, um, yeah, and yeah, it is one domain. Like, um, and yeah, there are some complexities around it, but it's still fairly manageable since it's not like while some other domains might be way more complicated, or if you're trying to build an entire system, that's interesting for sure. Like we have seen samples of that, but it might be too much maintenance in order to keep those samples up and running.
Mm. Do you plan to, um, I don't know, maintain that project? Maybe add other styles of auctions if they show up? I don't know. Or is it like a done exploration, a done experiment for you? And
No, well, it has been sort of useful in that we have, for instance, when there is like this uh, the, on F sharp projects, there are some projects where like F sharp plus and Fleece and those where I've tried out some features of those libraries in this in order because it is a known domain and it's a safe space to play around with
mm,
things.
okay. Um, I think we can wrap it up
Yeah,
with this. Yeah, thanks, Oscar. That was quite interesting. And I think it was really valuable to see another model as a good demo domain
yeah,
to explore a language and not new technique. So yeah, thanks for sharing that
yeah,
with us.
yeah. I hope to see someone else do some maybe have some other domain or something that
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, if people are watching and have a have an interesting domain at hand, feel free to reach out and share your findings with us. Yeah, we will be back in May with some interesting content. Not giving away what it will be, but it will be interesting. And with that, I think we will wrap it up for today. And yeah, have a nice Easter weekend for the people who
yeah,
are celebrating. See you
have a
next
nice
time.
time.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.